Okay, so today we are talking about ecosystems. But I seem to have forgotten everything about ecosystems. I don't even know what the word means. I just wrote it on the board. So I need you guys to take, let's say 30 seconds to a minute in your groups and come up with 1 to 2 things that you may have remembered about ecosystems. It can be anything in the world, because I know you guys have you might have talked about this in 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten. So I want to see what you guys already know, okay? I'm going to call on each group to call out one thing. Have you guys talked about ecosystems before? No? What do you guys think? What do you think an ecosystem is? We'll start with that. Junior, what do you think an ecosystem is?
I think it is life.
Life? Okay. We'll start with that. That's a good start. Life. What else? What do we think an ecosystem is? Marley.
A place where something lives.
I like that. Place where something lives. Place to do something lives. Alright. Who else? Josh.
Like an environment.
Environment? Okay. Alright. It's down. What else? Who else wants to take a guess as to what an ecosystem might be? Sam. Food chain? What is a food chain? Do you know? Sam, do you know what a food chain is?
Food chain is what eats what and how life is.
What eats what and how life goes and moves about. Okay. Kendall?
Habitat?
Habitat? Did we have? No, we had environment. Okay. Guys, you knew more than you guys were giving yourselves credit for. Trust your instincts. Okay. Taylor, did you have your hand raised? What were you gonna say?
Habitat.
Habitat, okay.
The life cycle.
Life cycle. Alright, let's see if we can get 2 more. Yes, Lee.
Habitat.
You already said habitat. Whitley?
Something that runs in your body.
Something that what?
Runs in your body.
Runs in your body. I'm just gonna write our body. Okay. And 1 more. Or no more, it doesn't matter. Does anyone want to take one more guess? Lee? No? Okay, so we went from no one knowing anything about ecosystem to talking about life, a place something lives, an environment, food chain, habitat, life cycle, and our body. I think that's a pretty good start for people who don't know anything about life cycles, right? Or about ecosystems. Because I would say most of these we'll talk about today, tomorrow, and we're actually going to get starting today. We're going to start a really cool 2-week unit with a really fun project that we're going to be doing over the course of this week and next week. So what I want you guys to do now, I'm going to call one group at a time. Over there are green science textbooks. They are, I believe, last year's textbooks, right?
Yeah, they
Or they're
they
old?
were a previous adoption, but they're
Yeah.
better than what I like the new.
And I agree wholeheartedly. So here's the thing. They are a class set. They are not your personal textbook. So you cannot write in it. You cannot highlight in it. So when we're reading, what do we have to really be doing? You have to be paying attention. So Whitley's group, grab a textbook and come sit on the floor. Alright, Gabby's group, please go grab a book and have a seat on the floor. Alright. Juniors group. Grab a book and have a seat on the floor. do not write or highlight in this book. They are not yours. Claire's group. And Joshua's group. Alright. Okay. So aside from the fact that we always have to pay attention when we're reading, you guys are going to get a worksheet that you guys are going to be doing today and tomorrow. Miss Claire. Or DQ. You're being second. You're being called over there.
Speech.
You can just put that back on the counter, okay? Thank you. You guys are going to be getting a worksheet where you'll have to answer vocabulary questions and comprehension questions. So that's why you really need to be paying attention. Okay, I need everyone to turn to page 138. It should say lesson 1, what is an ecosystem? Perfect. So I like this, again, I agree with Mrs. Miller, I think this book is a lot better than, yeah, it's okay, they're ripped, it's fine, just don't rip it anymore.
Treat them with care because they're not going to be replaced, and I really like them.
I like these books because it has a lot of guiding questions and it highlights everything and tells you what the main ideas are. So it's I really enjoy the book.
And the vocabulary, I think, is really clear
Yes.
as well for the kids.
So, lesson 1, what is an ecosystem? Let's start with, does anyone know what those animals are? The top right? Lee?
They are prairie dogs.
Prairie dogs, they're really cute. Okay,
Thomas Jefferson had one sent to him by 2 people I told you last week, who sent him a prairie dog as a gift as something on their expedition they were giving to show.
Riley?
This will tie in some history. Lewis and Clark.
Alright,
I sent him one.
people sometimes build homes where prairie dogs live. This makes the space for the animals smaller. Then the population of prairie dogs must live with this change. So this doesn't really give you a definition of population, but using your context clues, what do you think the population of animals is? And yeah, Miles.
How much? A group of animals?
A group of animals, okay. Whitley,
But that's not
you're gonna say? Gabby?
And the forest and there are 2 million.
Okay. Alright. And again, all these 4 words that are highlighted on here are going to be talked over in the chapter, so we'll see if your answers are right. It is important to protect the environment. The environment is made up of living and non-living things. That's important. A lot of people, or a lot of students I've noticed, for some reason when they think environment and habitat, they only think of animals or plants. But there's a lot of non-living stuff as well in an ecosystem and in an environment that is there. So they're still part of that ecosystem or an environment. Changing the direction of a flowing river can hurt the river's ecosystem. And if a whole population of trees dies, the community of birds and animals that depend on them will suffer and change. I want to point this out. It said if a whole population of trees. So does population mean animals?
No.
It doesn't have to mean animals. It can mean flowers. It can mean a population of trees, okay? So get that out of your head of when you hear population, you just think of animals, because that's not necessarily true. All right, turn the page. Ecosystems. Are we there? Page 140?
Yeah.
All right. All the things around you make up the environment. An environment includes living things. Living things are people, animals, and plants. Non-living things are an environment too. Non-living things include water and air. Soil and weather are non-living too. Your room environment has people, paper, light, air, and much more. All the things that interact in an environment make up an ecosystem. An ecosystem has 2 parts, living things and non-living things. An ecosystem can be large or small, wet or dry, cold or hot. I want to talk about this for a second. Okay. No,
It's frozen.
Oh.
That's why, hold on.
Oh, I can just use the whiteboard. Okay.
Sorry, I
No,
was
that's okay.
just getting ready to print something.
So we have the environment, and we have the ecosystem. Right? They both, collectively, are made up of what two things? Josh?
Living and non-living.
Living and non-living. But what's the difference between an environment and an ecosystem?
The ecosystem had like things that like interact with each other.
Exactly. The environment is the place, the physical location of where all these things live. So if we're talking about the ocean as our big ecosystem, because again, I said ecosystems can be super small, but it can be super big. So if we're talking about an ocean, you have all the rocks, you have seaweed, you have coral reefs, you have fish, you have everything, living, non-living. That's the environment. But the ecosystem is how the sharks interact with the fish, and how the fish interact with the anemone, and how the anemone interacts with the light coming in from the sun. So that's the difference between the ecosystem and the environment. The ecosystem is simply how all the non-living and living things interact with one another. Are we good on that? Okay. So the parts of an ecosystem work together. Dead plants make the soil healthy, soil and water help new plants grow, animals eat plants. It's one big circle of
Life.
perfect. Okay, an ecosystem on page 141 can be under a rock. Wet soil, insects, and worms are in that ecosystem. It's a very tiny ecosystem. An ecosystem can be large. A forest is a large ecosystem. You have trees, animals, and rocks are in a forest ecosystem. An ecosystem has a climate. The climate can be hot, it can be warm or cold. The climate can be wet or dry. The desert has what kind of climate?
Dry.
Very dry climate. Who's ever been to a desert? A desert climate?
My papa has.
Your papa has, have you?
Yeah.
Okay. How does your skin react when you go?
You get sunburned.
You get sunburned? Okay, that's not what I was saying. When you go to a desert, it's very dry. So your skin becomes very dry. I know when I went to Israel in the desert in the south of Israel, my lips just started becoming very chapped. So you go from one climate to the next and your body will react differently. In a forest, though climate might be cool and damp, climate changes affect ecosystems. So in a forest ecosystem, instead, the climate can be rainy or dry, cold or hot. So just because you have a forest ecosystem on this side of the country and a forest ecosystem on the west coast, are those two forest ecosystems going to have the same climate?
No.
Not necessarily. Lee?
It's like when you go from hot water to cold water.
Mm-hmm. Let's save stories because we have a lot to read through, okay? Alright, let's flip the page. Alright, individuals and populations. Who wants to read this page? Kennedy.
One deer is an individual.
Louder.
One deer is an individual.
There you go.
A group of deer is called a population. A population is a group of the same kind of plant or animal living in the same ecosystem. A blue jay is an individual. A group of blue jays is a population. Robins are birds too, but robins are different population because robins are not the same blue jays.
Okay. This is important. When you're talking about populations, you're talking about the same type. Okay? So there are pandas, regular black and white pandas that we see in the Atlanta Zoo. Then there's the what, Colin? Red pandas. Are they part of the same population? No, they are not part of the same population because one are classified as red pandas and one is, I think it's just pandas, black and white pandas. Okay? So they're two separate populations. Alright. Who wants to read page 143? Gabby.
Some population can live in different ecosystems. Some birds live in dry places. They can also live in wet places. If an ecosystem changes, the birds can fly somewhere else. Some populations must live in only one kind of ecosystem. If the ecosystem changes, the population will have a hard time.
So I kind of already alluded to how ecosystems might change through weathering, right? Through harsh weather, that might change. For example, there's a video that I was watching yesterday on Hurricane Florence and how it completely just destroyed many different ecosystems for animals. The animals were either left dead or were left to leave and vacate the area. Besides natural consequences, what else might cause ecosystems to change? Riley?
Lumberjacks chopping down forest.
Lumberjacks? Okay. I'm talking about, what are we? People. People change ecosystems all the time. And sometimes not for the best reasons. Okay? So the reason why I think it's so important that we start studying ecosystems now is because hopefully you guys will realize in the future, okay, maybe we don't need to knock down this forest and build a whole new development or all these retirement homes that you see popping up in the Cobb County area. Because it destroys those ecosystems. It completely wipes out the area, forces animals to either move or they die. So it's very important.
They become, like if you've been to Red Top Mountain, the deer there are very, very, very small. Some of them look more like the size of dogs. It shouldn't be that small.
No.
They're hungry. They're overpopulated there because they're being forced out of other ecosystems, right? When you build a neighborhood and deer were there, don't they have to go somewhere? And if you put them all in one area, the problem is that what they eat, that also affects the ecosystem. You also have plants that are not thriving that used to thrive because you've got more animals eating it, and some of them are literally starving to death.
Marley, do you have a question?
We have
A question or a story?
Question or a story, because we have a lot to read through. Hold it to the end if you have time. So again, it's super important that even though you guys are 9, 10 years old, or 10 and 11, whatever, however old you guys
9
are.
and 10.
9 and 10, okay, that's what I thought. You start thinking that sometimes, let's just not build something right there, because it does hurt animals and plants. Communities, page 144. Plants, animals, and people live together. They live in a community. A community is all the populations that live in the same place, okay? So, we are a population of humans, because we're all humans. Different types of humans come from different backgrounds, but we're all people, so we're all a population of humans. But once you add the dogs and our cats and and all the other populations of animals that are living in our area, then you become a community. The Blue Ridge Mountain area is a community. Many populations live in this community. There are different tree populations, there are different animal populations, there are insect and bird populations. All these populations live together in the Blue Ridge. There are different kinds of forests in Georgia. The Okefenokee Swamp has a forest community. The populations there are different from Blue Ridge. For example, cypress trees grow in the swamp forest, while oak trees grow in the Blue Ridge forest. Some populations, such as black bears, live in both communities. Let's turn the page. Lesson 2. What are the roles of producers, consumers, and decomposers? Now, I'll be honest. The 4th grade standards according to Georgia doesn't think it's that important to teach you guys about herbivores, omnivores, carnivores. But do you guys already know what those are?
Yeah.
What's a carnivore? Riley?
Something that only eats meat.
Something that only eats meat. What's an herbivore? Raise your hand. Yes? Will?
Something that only eats plants.
Thank you. Something that eats plants. And what's an omnivore? Brooklyn? Plant, eat, and meat eaters. Perfect. Already took care of that standard that doesn't exist. So a cow is an herbivore. It eats only plants. A bobcat is a carnivore. It eats other animals. A plant is a producer because it can make its own food. Does anyone know the process of what it's called, the name of the process that plants use to make their own food? Luke? It's a big word.
Oh, I thought it was something else.
Okay.
Photosynthesis?
Photosynthesis, exactly. It uses the sun to produce its food. It's really cool. A ladybug is a consumer because it must eat other living things. A bear eats both plants and animals. It is an omnivore. And sow bugs eat dead plants. They are one kind of decomposer. Other decomposers break down parts of dead animals. All right, producers and consumers. Next page. Who wants to read that page? 148. Let's have Josh. Nice and loud.
Green plants make their own food. Their leaves use the energy and sunlight to make food. Any living thing that makes its own food is called a producer. Plants are producers. Producers can be small, like moss. Producers can be large, like an oak tree.
Alright, now look at the diagram below. Plants use energy from sunlight to make food. Without the sun, the planet or plants would die. So again, they use the energy that comes directly from that sunlight to produce its own food. I think it's really cool. Some animals eat plants. The energy stored in the plants is used by the animal's body. Deer and cows eat plants. Some animals eat other animals. Lions and hawks eat other animals. They do not eat plants. An animal that eats plants or other animals is called a consumer. Consumers cannot make their own food the way plants can. Consumers must eat other living things. Consumers eat plants or other animals. So if you are a consumer, you can be either a carnivore, herbivore, or an omnivore. So all three of those fall under the category of being a consumer. Exactly. Okay. Kinds of consumers. Next page. So this is what I was talking about. There are three kinds of consumers. A herbivore is an animal that eats only plants or producers. Horses are herbivores. Squirrels and rabbits are herbivores. They also eat producers. A carnivore is an animal. It eats only other animals. Lions are carnivores. A carnivore can be large like a whale. A carnivore can be small like a frog. Carnivores eat other consumers. Marley, are you paying attention? Okay. An omnivore is an animal. It eats both plants and animals. Bears are omnivores. So are many people. They eat producers and consumers. I mean, we are omnivores, right? Unless you're... Is anyone in here a vegetarian? Strict vegetarian. Not even fish. Okay. So we're all omnivores. We eat plants, vegetables, and fruits, which I know some of you guys don't like. And you also eat meat, right? So this diagram shows how consumers get energy to live. Marley. The arrows show the direction of energy flow. So carnivores, I'm starting at the top, carnivores eat herbivores. Other carnivores and omnivores. Alright? Omnivores eat producers, herbivores, carnivores, and other omnivores. Green plants are producers, and herbivores eat only producers. Okay? So are we clear? I want to just clear up that confusion. There are producers, okay, which are plants, including trees, flowers, moss, all that. Then there are consumers. And what are the three different types of consumers? Who wants to raise their hand? Simon.
Carnivore, omnivore, and herbivore.
Right, okay. Let's turn to page 152. So flip it. You have to flip the page. Yes, Lee. Oh, you want to read it? Sure, but I need you to be really loud. Okay? Decomposers, take it away.
A decomposer is a living thing. A decomposer eats dead plants and animals. Decomposers also break down waste. A decomposer can make soil healthy. Good soil helps plants grow. Animals eat the healthy plants. This keeps the animal healthy too.
Okay. Continue on the next page.
Earthworms are decomposers. They eat dead plants. Fungi are decomposers too. Fungi break down wood from dead trees. Many bacteria are decomposers. Some bacteria live in the soil. Some bacteria live in water. Bacteria break down parts of dead plants and animals. Decomposers are very helpful. Without them, dead plants and animals would cover Earth.
They may sound gross, but guys, do we love decomposers?
Yeah.
Yes. Believe me, we don't want just dead animals lying around. That would get just gross and unsanitary. So they all have their own specific roles. Producers provide energy to all the animals. Obviously, animals use up all that energy when they eat it. And then the decomposers help clean up the area and get rid of all those dead animals. So everything kind of works in the big circle of
Life.
boom. Okay. Lesson 3, next page. How does energy flow through an ecosystem? A chipmunk's habitat is in the woods. Trees are all around. Acorns are on the ground. A habitat is an environment that meets the needs of living things. Okay? Some kinds of turtles dig a hole in the sand. They lay eggs in the hole. They eat grasses. These are parts of the turtle's niche, or role in its ecosystem. In a way, what's Mrs. Miller? What's our niche in this society, in this community? Yes. Teaching. We're teachers.
Wrong.
No? Queen, yeah.
of the classroom.
Queen of the classroom, I guess prince of the classroom because I'm not certified just yet.
Night.
And your niche is in this community, or in this habitat of a school. What's your niche? Student. So every single animal has its own specific role, exactly. And that's what this was just saying about the turtle. So chipmunks are found in the owl's food chain, which shows the flow of energy among living things. A hawk catches a fish. The fish is prey. An owl is a predator. It eats mice and snakes. Snakes eat mice. Hawks eat mice and snakes. These overlapping food chains make up a food web. And this next mini chapter will talk about it. But again, different food chains make up the greater food web. Okay? So there is a difference between food chain and food web. Food chain is one direction, up and down. So, I'm gonna erase this. So when you talk about a food chain, I'm just gonna draw circles because I don't want to get into specifics just yet. But you have a food chain. This animal eats this animal, and this animal eats that animal. Do we agree? Okay. Food web is all the interconnectedness of all the different food chains, okay? So we'll talk about that in this chapter. But the different food chains make up the food web. Question?
Yeah.
Yes.
So like food webs are when like multiple animals eat the same animal.
Yeah. So you'll see in a food web that you can have one animal eat an animal from one food chain, an animal from a second food chain, and sometimes even an animal from a third food chain. Exactly. All right, let's flip the page. We're almost done. Plants and animals live in certain places. This is a habitat. A habitat is an environment that meets the needs of living things, of a living thing. Some plants and animals meet their needs in a desert. Some live in a sea. Others live where it's cold. Different plants and animals can share a habitat. For example, spiders, snakes, and plants live together in the same desert habitat. So in order for an environment to be classified as a habitat, it needs to what? Yeah, Gabby. Meet the needs of everything living. So in our habitat, we have teachers, we have students, we have administrators, we have specialists. If all of our needs are able to be met, can we be considered a habitat? Yes. Each living thing has a role or a niche. A niche is how a living thing works within the habitat. A niche includes these things: where a plant or animal lives, how it reproduces or gives birth to offspring, where an animal gets food, and how an animal stays safe. Simon, are we paying attention? Okay. A sidewinder is a snake. It has venom. The venom helps the snake kill mice and birds. Using venom to kill is part of the snake's niche. If these snakes died, the desert would have too many mice and birds. There is not enough food in the desert for all of these animals. They would begin to starve. The snake's niche keeps the number of small animals in balance. Does that make sense? Every single animal, whether you think it's small, pointless, or whatever, has a specific role that helps the habitat survive and thrive, okay? And in using this example, if the snake didn't have its venom, there would be way too many mice and other small rodents in the desert. Does that make sense? Okay, let's flip the page.
Just like mosquitoes.
Just like mosquitoes. Good job. That was actually good. Okay, who wants to read about food chains? Let's have Lee.
Plants and animals depend on one another. Food energy moves from one living thing to another. A food chain shows the path of food energy. Most food chains start with producers, or plants that get energy from sunlight. An oak tree is a producer. Acorns grow on oak trees. Chipmunks eat acorns. The chipmunk is a consumer. Then a hawk eats the chipmunk. The hawk is a consumer too. This is how food energy moves. It starts with the acorn, it moves to the chipmunk, then it moves to the hawk. This is a food chain.
Okay. Which of these three animals, or these three living things, you have the hawk, the chipmunk, and the acorn. What's the only one out of this one food chain that is just a predator? Tail. The hawk. In this food chain, nothing eats the hawk. Okay? In other food chains and food webs, something might eat the hawk, but in this example, it is just the hawk. What is the only one that is just a predator? Just a predator. Gabby? Nope.
The chipmunk.
Not the chipmunk. The acorn. The acorn doesn't eat anything in this specific, well, not that, acorns don't eat anything anyway. I mean, it's, you know what I mean, it doesn't have teeth. But it doesn't feed on anything in this specific food chain, so it's just a predator. But what is the chipmunk? It's prey, but it's also a what? It's also a predator. It's also feeding on the acorn. So in this food chain, the chipmunk acts as both. So consumers that are eaten are called prey. Okay? Consumers that eat prey are called predators. The chipmunks are prey. Hawks are predators. Owls are predators too. Owls eat chipmunks. Predators such as hawks and owls compete for prey. So there's competition in habitats. It's pretty feisty sometimes. All right, food web. A food chain shows how an animal gets energy. Different food chains can cross, which is what I just said. For example, a hawk eats mice and small birds. When food chains cross, they make a food web. Food webs are on land, food webs are in water too. Okay, so let's look at this little green box. Trace the different food chains or paths that make up this food web. Marley, will you bring your book and sit right here, please, next to me? For example, energy moves from plants to the mouse to the hawk. Energy also moves from plants to the snails to the sparrow. All right, let's look at the raccoon. What does the raccoon eat?
Snail
And the bird.
And the bird. What does the hawk eat?
The bird and the
rat.
Eats other birds, and let's just say that's a rat. So you see, and let's see, okay, hold on, let's look. Let's see. So you see how everything's kind of interconnected? There are guys, come on. So these have different food chains, but since they're connected, they make a big food web. Okay. At the bottom of the food web are first level consumers. Snails and insects are first level consumers. Anything that eats a first level consumer is called a second level consumer. Whoa. Snakes and birds are second level consumers. They are eaten by top level consumers. Hawks and wolves are top level consumers. Like all living things, Like all living things, when top level consumers die, decomposers help break down their remains. Okay. I'm gonna use.
You need the board again?
I can use this. It's fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you guys. Okay, hold on. I don't like how this. I've never seen this first level, second level, or top level consumer thing. So I'm gonna give you guys different vocabulary, and you can choose which one you want. Okay. In the book, what is the bottom level called?
First level.
First level. First level what?
Consumers.
What's the next level?
Second level consumers.
Level. I'm just gonna do CON. And the top level.
Top
level.
consumers.
Groundbreaking here. There are other words that I've seen, and I'm sure Mrs. Miller has seen, instead of first, second level, and top level consumers. You have your primary consumers. You have your secondary consumers. And then you have, does anyone want to take a guess as to what the top level is? You have primary, secondary.
Top level would be us in some of the, correct?
Yeah.
Does anyone want to take a guess as to what that is, what that word is? We're called tertiary. Tertiary consumers. Again, I have personally, do you guys not use those words?
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade? Fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade, not high school or college.
Mhm.
But again, it's fine. Pushing your brains.
First, second, top, you're good.
Yeah, first, second, top, use it. Primary, secondary, tertiary, extending, using more advanced vocabulary words. Okay. All right, next page. Energy pyramids. Marley, please flip the page. Welcome back, Miss Claire. So in a food chain, energy is passed on. Energy moves from one thing to another. An energy pyramid shows how much energy is passed on. Producers are at the bottom of the energy pyramid. Plants get energy from the sun. Plants use about 90% of all this energy. Claire, just sit, Claire, just sit next to Lee and just look on with him, okay? Lee, will you share with her? Thank you. The extra 10% is stored. Plants store extra energy in their roots, stems, and leaves. Then plants are eaten by squirrels and rabbits. These small consumers use up 90% of the energy from the plants. The other 10% of the energy is stored in their bodies. The smaller animals, so the energy pyramids show how much energy each animal uses up. So that's why it's even 90%, 10%, etc. The smaller animals are eaten by owls and foxes. These larger animals use up 90% of the energy from the smaller animals. The other 10% is stored in their bodies. Small amounts of energy are passed on. Energy moves from one living thing to the next. Each level passes a little energy to the next. The first level of consumers need many producers. That is why the bottom of the energy pyramid is wide. So if we're looking at this as our energy pyramid, the bottom level is going to use up the most energy. That's why it's so wide. And each time you move to another level, it gets less and less energy. Okay? Let's turn the page. We are almost there. We're on the home stretch. What factors influence our ecosystems? Insects and plants need each other. They are biotic or living parts of the ecosystem. Rocks and water are not alive. Marley, you are not paying attention right now. I'm getting tired of it. You're right here.
And if you need to talk to her again, that's the third strike, she's out of recess.
Rocks and water are not alive. They are non-living, and they are the abiotic parts of the ecosystem. Living things affect ecosystems. Plants, no, you're right there, you're good. Plants are the living parts of an ecosystem. Animals are living parts of an ecosystem too. Living parts of an ecosystem are biotic. Bio, using our ELA skills, what's bio? It's a what? It's not a root word, it comes in the beginning.
Prefix.
Prefix, it's a prefix. So bio means life. Plants affects animals in many ways. Plants are food for animals and insects. If a plant dies, there is less food. Plants, like trees, are also homes for animals and insects. Animals affect plants in many ways. Birds and deer spread seeds. This causes plants to grow in new places. Animal droppings make the soil healthy. What does it mean by animal droppings? Poop. Poop is good for the environment. This helps the plants to grow. If too many animals eat a plant, they can kill it. Plants and animals are biotic. They can change an ecosystem. All right. Turn the page. Gross is right, but it is necessary. Non-living things affect ecosystems. Plants and animals are living parts of an ecosystem. Ecosystems, which we've already said, has non-living parts too. Sunlight, air, water, and soil are non-living. These non-living parts are abiotic. They are not alive, but they can change an ecosystem. Look at the picture on these pages. The sun's light is shining. Plants need sunlight to grow and make food. Sunlight is an abiotic factor. But we already discussed, can't non-living factors harm an environment too? Such as floodwaters, right? So just because it's abiotic doesn't mean that it's always going to affect it in a positive way. Water, speaking of, is abiotic. Plants need water to grow. Fish must live in water. Animals need to drink water. Water affects the ecosystem. Soil is abiotic. Many plants need soil to grow. Some soil is dry and hard. Some soil is soft and wet. Soil affects the kinds of plants that can grow in the ecosystem. Last page. What is or climate affects ecosystems? Who wants to read this last page? Riley, loud and proud.
What is the climate where you live? Is it hot, cold, or warm? Do you have a lot of rain, or is it dry where you live? Do you have a lot of sunlight? Climate is abiotic factor.
Abiotic.
Abiotic factor.
Hold on. Abiotic. The A has a long sound to it, so it's not abiotic, it's abiotic.
Abiotic
There you go.
factor. Climate is the amount of sunlight that shines in a place, rain that falls in a place, warm air that is in a place, cold air that is in a place. Climate affects the soil and the ecosystem. climate affects the plants that grow in an ecosystem. Climate also affects the animals that live in the ecosystem.
Right. Okay. So again, climate is important. It affects it in positive ways and it's the opposite of positive. Negative ways. Absolutely. Okay. Here's what I want you guys to do now. We have about 15 minutes, which is amazing. I'm giving you a packet. Or it's not a packet, it's 2 pages. So I'm gonna just, once you get one, just pass it along. Joshua, you take that one. We're good. All right. Riley. There are 2 pages. 2 front and back pages. You are not doing the second one today. You are going to do that tomorrow. So you're not, because we haven't read that yet, so you're going to read that part tomorrow. And this you can write on. This, yes.
Oh.
Oh, I was just, okay. I was gonna,
That's fine.
I was gonna collect that into the class.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay. What do you mean it's stapled the wrong way?
No, you just need to flip it.
No, Marley. There's, Claire, do you have one? Is everyone, oh, we're missing 2 students. Okay. Arthur and Cynthia. Okay, so I want to read through this. I like this because this has a word bank. So the first part is all about vocabulary. But it gives you a good word bank. Okay. Fill in the blank with the correct vocabulary word from the word bank. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 words. And how many questions is there? 15. So I am assuming that each word is only being used once. Oh, hold on one second, Gabby. So 1, the living and non-living parts of the blank work together. 2, in a forest, blank, the climate can be wet or dry. An earthworm is a blank because it eats dead plants. 1 mouse is an individual, but many mice make up a blank. Plants, animals, and people live together in a blank. A blank, number 6, can make its own food. 7, a frog is a blank because it must eat other living things. 8, a cow is in blank because it eats plants. 9, a lion is a blank because it eats other animals. 10, a bear is in blank because it eats other animals and plants. 11, a bear's blank is in the woods. 12, mice and other small animals are on the owl's blank. 13, when an owl catches a mouse, the mouse is the blank. 14, when an owl catches a mouse, the owl is the blank. And 15, when different food chains cross, they make a, I'll give you a freebie. I'll give you 1 freebie. So if you get number 15 wrong, I know you are not what? When different food chains cross, they make a food web. 15 is food web. Everyone should get that one right. All right, turn it back. Hold on one second, Kennedy. Then you have 8 comprehension questions. Number 1, all the things around you make up the A, B, C, or D. 2, an owl is a B, C, or D. A mouse is A, B, C, or D. A blank, for number 4, is all the populations that live in the same place. 5, a blank can make its own food. Number 6, lions and consumers. Lions are consumers because 7, herbivores eat blank. And 8, a blank shows the path of food energy. You can use your books. Please do not write in the books, but you do have to work independently because this is going to be taken up for a grade. Have at it.
They have, here's the problem. That's what I was wondering.
Without reading the second chapter, and then on Thursday,
Do the second.
and then start the part of the
Yes, that sounds good. That sounds really good.
Does anyone have any questions? I know, I think Gabby had a question. Did you get it answered? No, you didn't have a question? No? Whitley or Marlon? Okay. Again, 15 is what? Is a what? Food web. Okay. Everyone should get that.
Keep your eyes on your own papers, guys.
Use your book. Yeah, you can use your books, just don't write in the books. Marlon, I'm gonna read this back to you and tell me if this makes sense. The living and non-living parts of the predator work together. You want that? Animation after everything read and stop the night closure. You were not paying attention. And erase that and open your book. Figure it out. Which ones came off of this?
There is one.
That one actually may have been the one you gave me.
I think it was.
Yeah. How you doing, Aaron? Good? I really suggest that you use the book as a reference and a resource because some of those terms can get very confused. You can get confused between environment, ecosystem, habitat. Use your book. Riley, do you need a sharpening pencil?
No.
Oh.
You okay?
don't worry about rushing to finish. I know you guys are probably not going to finish today. That first page. Bless you. Before we go to specials in a few minutes, I would like one volunteer to go to the board in a moment, and I want you to circle all the things that we listed above earlier. Circle the ones that we actually talked about in the reading. Let's have Brooklyn. Grab a pen, and I want you to circle all the things that, again, we talked about. Look at that. So cool. Okay? Oh. Let's use a different color. Let's do...
Hold on, let me unfreeze it.
Oh, that would... Yeah.
Give me just a second here.
Is it easier to unfreeze in the old smartboard?
Everything's easier, give me just a second. But it's on this, there's a button that says freeze. Do you see how there's a snowflake in the upper left-hand corner?
Yes. Oh, look at that. Okay.
Unfreeze.
Oh. Alright, let's do blue. Okay. Do we agree? Food chain. Did we talk about food chain?
Yeah.
Quickly, what's the food chain?
Food chain is
Oh, hold on. Gabby. Yeah, it's what things eat and what things get eaten by. Remember, but only it's one-way direction. When it becomes a big connection, it's what?
A giant chain.
No, food web. All right. What's the next thing that we talked about? Yeah, you got it. All right. Habitat. We talked about habitat. What's a habitat? Someone other than Gabby. Make sure your names are on this. I'm gonna come collect this as we finish this up.
First and last name, boys and girls.
Riley, what's a habitat?
A place where something lives.
Yes, a place where something lives, but what does it need? Name. It's okay if you don't finish something. But what does it need to be considered a habitat? Name. Josh.
it needs what everything that was there like.
It needs to have the proper resources to sustain the life that's living there. All right. Next thing, Brooklyn. Place something lives. We talked about it. We talked about environments, habitats. We talked about ecosystems. Absolutely. Alright, next thing. Okay, we did talk about life, and 100% we talked about what different animals need to eat or to consume in order to sustain life. Alright? And, okay, go ahead. Environment. Guys, again, I first asked at the beginning of the lesson, I said, or I asked you guys to come up with things, and you guys didn't, but you did. So, with that being said, quietly line up. Well, first off,
We did.
did we talk about lifestyle?
Yeah.
I don't. So a life cycle, which we'll talk about at one point in the next couple of weeks, but a life cycle is just take one animal. Let's just take humans from birth through toddler, through being a child, teenager, adult, older person, death.
Yeah.
So we did not talk about life cycle, but we are getting there. So as you guys go and line up, please just put this textbook on where you guys got it from, quietly.
Put the textbook